welcome you all to Razorback Chat 4, where we've got our special guest, the Deputy Athletic Director, Internal Engagement, Finance, and Capital Projects, basically the CFO of the University of Arkansas Athletics. Clayton Hamilton's with us today. In previous conversations we've had in class and through presentations that you've done, you've touched a little bit on your background in finance and all the moves you made. Would you mind telling the class again and our guest again about those?
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to. So I'll share my background and then happy to pause at any time and answer any questions that anyone may have. So again, Clayton Hamilton, I'm from the state of Arkansas, grew up in Little Rock, and actually went to school here a long time ago, back in the early 90s. So I was a student on this campus, and certainly like to share that I literally was sitting in your chairs, right? So like I was on this campus pursuing a degree, trying to figure out what am I gonna do with the career in the rest of my life. So I landed actually in the business school and ended up with an accounting degree and got to that last year of my undergraduate time here on campus and had to decide, do I pursue a career in public accounting or do I stay in school and pursue a master's degree? So I decided the route to pursue a master's degree. I pursued that at a small school in Alabama called the U.S. Sports Academy. This is, again, in the kind of the mid-90s at this point. There were not a whole lot of sport management programs throughout the country at that time, but went to the U.S. Sports Academy to pursue a master's in sports administration with the idea of combining the accounting degree, the master's in sports, and seeing if I could carve out a career in the sports industry. Absolutely the most important part of my master's degree program was doing an internship, which I completed with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So picked up, moved to Cleveland. I like to tell folks I did not know a soul. Moved to Cleveland, Ohio, did not have a place to live. I rolled into town with my belongings and stayed in a hotel, started my internship, found a place to live, and that was just that important to me to pursue that opportunity just with a sports organization and completing that internship. One of the most important things I learned from that internship was what it was going to take to really be able to achieve success in the sports industry. And then for me, pursuing the finance position, I knew I needed my CPA. Needed kind of that final stamp on my resume with the accounting degree, the master's degree, get the CPA. Really thought that would position myself to really be able to have some success with a career in the sports industry. So moved back to Little Rock, pursued the CPA, started working in corporate America, worked at Altel Corporation, telecommunications company down in Little Rock. Once I got the CPA, just started looking for opportunities in the sports industry. I got that next opportunity with the Dallas Cowboys, moved to Dallas, was with the Cowboys for a year. I knew I wanted to be on a college campus, so kept looking for opportunities in college athletics, got that opportunity with Florida State. So moved to Tallahassee, was with the Florida State Seminoles for right about 6 years, started to advance in my career at that point in time. Then got the opportunity with the Colorado Buffaloes. So moved out to Colorado to be the CFO for the Colorado Buffaloes, was out there for 3 years when I got a call with the opportunity to come back to Arkansas to be the CFO for Razorback Athletics. So that's a lot to share. I doubt you were counting the moves, but there were 7 moves in a 15-year period. And I like to share that number just as an example. So I had to move around to pursue opportunities in the sports industry, pursue opportunities to advance with my career. And I tell students all the time, if I left Arkansas and said the only job I want is the CFO for the Razorback Athletics, I never would have gotten here, right? I would have had to find a job somewhere and my career probably would have taken me in a different direction. I had to, for me, move 7 times in a 15-year period, throughout the country to create that opportunity to come back to Arkansas. So I'll pause there, Jeremy, if there's any questions on on my background. If that prompted any questions, happy to respond to those.
Sure. While we wait for those, so the road is highly traveled, definitely within the sports industry. I know I'm learning that right now. I'm realizing that I'm slowly having to probably move away from Fayetteville for a little bit, but hopefully coming back here like you did. So you
And
like
I'll share, Jeremy, just on that point too. I mean, there are just tremendous opportunities out there. The best thing for me was to move away and learn how to work in finance and sports in Florida and Cleveland and Dallas and Colorado. So I just highly encourage students to, don't look just within Arkansas or Fayetteville, look at opportunities throughout the country, just tremendous opportunities to pursue throughout the country. So sorry to cut you off, Jeremy, just wanted to add that thought.
You're good. It's great advice. So, and it comes from somebody experienced. So, but you got to see so many different aspects of finance through these universities and these organizations that you've been with. And kind of moving on to the next question, everybody, kind of likes money. I think we all can agree on that, but everyone doesn't know how to budget. And we're kind of really blessed to have you at the University of Arkansas because our budget's always very successful or very on point when compared to other athletic departments. How do you start balancing a budget for a Power 5 athletic department, and what are like the beginning steps of that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Jeremy. So I like to share with students. I know those of you that have been in my class have heard this, right? A budget is quite simply a plan. You got to have a plan, right? Our coaches have a plan with how they're going to practice and how they're going to compete. Athletic director has a plan. How are you going to manage the athletic program? I'm hoping everybody on this call has a plan. How are you going to pay for college? How do you manage your finances? So a budget, if you just break it down, it's having a plan. And, the starting point, certainly within college athletics and a budget planning process is, knowing the resources you have to work with, right? You got to know, how much are you going to generate in revenue to support your program? And then for us, I'm always looking out over at least a 5-year period, to be able to forecast out revenues over a 5-year period. So having a good idea of what those revenues are going to look like really ought to be really the starting point for your planning process. For us, and I've shared this in class, I mean, we typically spend the better part of 4 to 6 months, planning the budget for the new year. We're going to sit down with all of our coaches, sit down with our department heads, talk about the needs for the programs, talk about, some of the expense projections that we have. And then my job is to kind of put all that together. What are the resources we have? What are the needs we have throughout the department? And at the end of the day, the model for Razorback athletics is to be a self-sustaining athletic program. So we have to come back to a balanced budget. So, I mean, that's a big part of my job in conjunction with the athletic director and the leadership within, Razorback athletics to, take the resources we have, all the needs for the department, and come back to a balanced budget for the upcoming year. And then kind of the advice I would share is just to be conservative. I mean, I take a very conservative approach, when we're planning our budget, being conservative with the revenues and making sure you don't put yourself in a bad position down the road if, for whatever reason, revenues don't play out, maybe in line with what you forecasted.
Making a plan is always the best way to do it. I wish I would have known that in my undergraduate career. But we all have those plans. And then there's that one year, a year ago about now, that kind of threw a wrinkle in that plan. COVID-19 hit, and it kind of hit every athletic department hard, shutting them all down, like you said before. So how, kind of speeding up to today in our COVID-19 process, what have you, has the success of our non-revenue generating sports had an impact on finances at the university, or has that been nullified by COVID-19?
Yeah, so for Razorback Athletics, and you guys are probably familiar just tracking either through class or following our athletic programs. I mean, the revenue generating sports for us are football, men's basketball, and baseball. And I've shared before, I mean, we're very fortunate on our campus to generate a large amount of revenues in each of those sports. You know, if you look throughout the country, you know, sometimes an athletic program generates revenue in football, maybe not in basketball, or vice versa. Maybe it's basketball and not so much in football. You know, we're extremely fortunate to be able to generate a large amount of revenues from football, men's basketball, and then you have a baseball program that generates a large amount of revenue as well. So, you know, that's really how we fund our program. I mean, that's probably, you know, 95% of the revenue that we generate in a given year is through football, men's basketball, and baseball. So, you know, the other sports don't generate a large amount of revenue. Now, back to your question about the success of those, you know, programs, it really has teed up our athletic program to be able to go out and solicit some donations, you know, to support those programs. And certainly in a year where, you know, revenues are down due to, you know, the reduction in our capacities and limits on how many tickets we can sell, and we now have a pretty good case to go out and generate donations to support a track facility project, for example, that we're building, or, you know, to support the gymnastics program or women's basketball or, you know, softball, et cetera. So it kind of has created just a really, you know, good story to tell that there's a tremendous amount of success for the program in a year where revenues are challenged. There's now opportunities for donors to step in and support our programs. And I would add to that, probably Jeremy too. I mean, it's probably, you know, where those programs impact the budget more so really throughout the department. We're all cutting costs, you know, we're all reducing expenses, and that's how collectively we've kind of impacted the finances this year. It's less about generating more revenue, more about how are we collectively, you know, controlling our costs.
Keeping those non-revenue generating programs a success really helps with everything else, and just kind of along the lines. I mean, you keep your revenue sports high, and then you add those non-revenue generating sports in, and they really help to the budget. They add to the budget and add to revenues for the university too. So yeah, the success of the university definitely affects finances total. So kind of continuing on to our to what's coming up next, big NCAA tournament, especially for men's basketball, especially for women's basketball. How is that going to impact Razorback athletics? Can you give us a rundown of how that's given back to the schools?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the NCAA generates, I think the number is like 90 to 95% of their revenue from the men's basketball tournament, you know, with their television rights agreement, with the tickets and sponsorships they can sell for, you know, the 3 weeks that we're about to embark on in March with the men's basketball tournament. They distribute those funds back to Division I, Division II, Division III schools based on some formulas they have in place. Part of that for Division I is based on the success that teams and conferences have in the men's basketball tournament. So, you know, if your school is participating and conference schools are advancing in the tournament, you generate units in that determine the revenue distribution from the NCAA back to your particular conference. Within the SEC, one of the things that is, you know, maybe a little bit unique is we share revenues equally amongst all 14 schools. So, you know, back to years when Razorback basketball was not in the NCAA tournament, as recently as a couple of years ago, we still received a share of that distribution through the SEC. So this year we will be in the tournament. We'll be part of the you know, the schools that are generating units that are going to generate revenue back to the SEC, but it's not going to result in an increase in our distribution since we share revenues equally within the SEC. So, you know, really it's the way the SEC can create some competitive balance throughout the SEC, is even in a year that you're down, you're still guaranteed a share of that NCAA basketball revenue. Now, last year when the tournament got canceled, just to add a little bit of perspective, it was about a $2 million reduction for each school within the SEC due to that basketball tournament not happening. So that was how it impacted us last year by not having a tournament at all. This year, in it or not, we would still receive a share of that revenue through the SEC.
So other than the tournament finances being lost, what other limitations did the COVID impact have on the athletic program at the university?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, go back to last spring, certainly shutting down sports in March. We canceled half of a baseball season. So back to what I shared about baseball generating revenue for the program. We had to refund ticket sales, had to refund some sponsorships. So that was the impact last year. Fast forward to this fiscal year, you've seen the limits in our capacities within football, basketball, baseball. Venues has limited the amount of tickets that we can sell. So we're down about $25 million in ticket revenue just this fiscal year. So, I mean, it's been a significant impact on our revenues. Going back to what I shared about a planning process, we didn't plan to be down $25 million. We created some scenarios to where we would be prepared if that's how COVID played out. We were prepared in the fall for being down in our ticket sales. We were prepared for what if you had to shut down completely, what if you got to January and had to shut down again. So we created these scenarios to be able to manage that throughout the year.
And it seems like the university really planned well for it. I mean, looking back on it, you have to see, like, from a whole financial and a whole athletic standpoint. I think one of the things that I'm kind of really proud of the athletic department was that we really didn't have to cancel anything because of COVID-19 within our program, which is pretty neat and pretty rare if you look at the rest of the nation. Kind of continuing on to our next section of questions. It's about the U of A, and you're pretty much an expert on it. You graduated here, so and this that seeing that that expansion in Fayetteville is limited for the university, and renovation is more likely than expansion, and that you like to look 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Where do you see the university and the athletic department going from here?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question again, Jeremy. So we, related to facilities, I mean, if that's kind of maybe the context of the question, I mean, back up maybe 10 years and, we created a master plan, right? And back when I first came back to campus here, we created this master plan, which really is a planning process that looks out over a kind of a 10, 15, 20 year period of time for the what if, what if related to all of your sports and all of your facilities, what's going on through our college athletics, through the SEC, what type of needs do you have for new or renovated facilities. So we had this 10, 15, 20 year plan of about $350 million worth of facility projects. Fast forward 10 years, we've completed roughly 90% of that master plan. So we're now in a little bit of this phase of creating that next 10, 15, 20 year plan. What are the needs for our athletic facilities? We don't need to expand. I think maybe was part of the question. If you look at our football stadium project, I mean, that was part of the approach we took, really 6 years ago when we launched that project, is we didn't need 100,000 seat football stadium. We needed different types of seats is what our fans were asking for. We needed different types of amenities to enhance the fan experience. We're having that same conversation about Bud Walton Arena. We don't need to turn 19,000 seats into 22 or 25,000 seats just because your basketball team maybe is performing well. we need different types of seats in a venue that is now 25 years old. So that's really the approach we're taking, is not looking to expand. We're looking to more along the lines of modifying what we have to some ways meet the demands of our fans and provide the amenities that are in demand by our fans, and providing the amenities needed for our student athletes and coaches to compete. The students have heard me say this many times too. I don't like to look beyond that 15, 20-year period of time. Certainly as I'm talking about financing a project, I'm just not convinced these facility projects last more than that 15, 20-year period. And the approach I've taken is don't put debt on your books beyond what a likely useful life of a facility is going to be. So hope that answers your question, Jeremy. Glad to expand on that though if needed.
Oh, completely. No, it's all about renovation right now and kind of updating what we have, what the great facilities at the university. So, but with that, we're down to like 5 minutes left. If you've got anything, if you can, what can, kind of some closing thoughts and advice, what can students be doing right now to better position themselves when looking for an internship or a job in college athletics right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and also for the students I've had in class, and I'll share this again, right? I talk about the commitment you make having absolutely an impact, a direct correlation to the impact it's going to have on your career. So you have this 4 to 5 year period of time on a college campus where the commitment you're making now can have a direct impact on your future with your career and wherever your life takes you into the future. So things that you can be doing, certainly networking. I talk a lot about establishing your network. If you've not, started that network with the folks on this call, in my view, you're missing an opportunity. These are going to be your colleagues in the sports industry one day. If you're not creating a network within Razorback Athletics, you're missing an opportunity. And now's the opportunity to reach out to folks in Razorback Athletics and ask questions. How did you get to where you are today? What's the path you travel? What type of advice that you have? So now's the opportunity to really start that network if you've not already done so. The other advice I would share is just to be persistent and to be flexible. I've shared with students in the past, back when I was looking for that first opportunity, it was, I sent out hundreds of resumes, right? The Cleveland Cavaliers were not the first opportunity I pursued, right? You're going to have to be persistent, is be persistent in your job search for that first internship or that first job opportunity, and then be flexible. Like I said earlier, don't be afraid to take advantage of an opportunity in Cleveland, Ohio, of all places, right? I knew nobody in Cleveland. I was from Arkansas, lived in Alabama for 8 months, and I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, but fantastic opportunity. So be flexible, be persistent, and, create that network is probably the best advice I would offer up at this point.
Well, that's great advice. And thank you for taking this opportunity to speak to us and having a good time with us right here in Razorback Chat 4. Once again, y'all give it up for Clayton Hamilton for coming in, our CFO at the University of Arkansas. Real quick audience question, rapid fire for you, Clayton. Who's been your biggest influence and what was one major thing you learned from them?
Oh, wow. Biggest influence. Believe it or not, in an odd way, Frank Rules had a tremendous impact on my career, because what I did when I was a senior undergraduate student on this campus is I set up an interview and went and sat down with Frank Rules. And to this day, I just kind of laugh, and I know he was not expecting me. I walked in and he didn't realize he had the meeting, but I came prepared with a list of questions that, hey, how do you start a career in the sports industry? And he offered up his advice, and I took it to heart and helped that, a little bit of motivation and advice to pursue the career in the sports industry. So that's one that comes to mind, Jeremy.
Frank definitely is a legend. Definitely. Will always be a legend. So once again, thank you for your time.